In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight on America in Black and White, we explore the journey of a man whose life reflects service, transformation, and unwavering commitment to community. From Camden to Dover, from the United States Army to the halls of the DC Council, from social work to public policy, and now to the cutting edge of AI innovation. Dr. Dante S. Daniel has lived a life rooted in purpose. He is a bridge builder between systems and people, between policy and lived experiences, between the needs of communities and the tools required to meet them. His work spans criminal justice reform, behavioral health, youth development, and technology, all anchored by a belief that dignity, opportunity, and justice must be accessible to all. Tonight, we talk about his journey, his service, his leadership, and the creation of TryCaSie, a platform reshaping how human service professionals document care. And we explore the influences that shaped him: Muhammad Ali's courage, Malcolm X's discipline, and Dr. King's moral clarity. This is not just an interview. This is a masterclass in resilience, innovation, and Black excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Dante Daniel. Hello,
Hey, how you
sir.
doing? How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. While we're here, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before we get into the show?
No, no.
Oh, wow. So you got a lot going on there in the background.
Yeah. I'm in the lobby. Well, work area, workspace. It's not anybody walking by too much. It's not going to be too many people walking by, like a heavy traffic or anything.
Let's get into the show. Can you tell us who was Dr. Dante Daniel before the titles, degrees, and leadership roles?
I am Bernetta Daniel's son. I will say that. That's, I think, how I started, or the first thing I remember of life is being Bernetta Daniel's son. Being a I would say a rambunctious child, but I would say um, a studious child, very studious my initial years. Um, and, I began to evolve. I would say I was somewhat easily malleable, um, where, I allowed my social influences to impact my behavior, but ultimately from the root, I would say I was just a studious kid. I read a lot. I would read anywhere. Um, at any time, I would pull out a book or grab a magazine in the grocery aisle while waiting on my mom to grocery shop, while using the restroom, but car rides, wherever. So I would say that that would be the start of me. And eventually, um, I somewhat circled back to that as I got older, and ultimately, I mean, it's somewhat prevalent in my accomplishments academically.
So what was it like growing up between Camden and Dover? Was there a
Okay,
difference?
yeah, it's a difference, but I was young when I moved from Camden, so I wouldn't necessarily know too much of the difference. I would just say that initially in Jersey, I had I had immediate family support there. My grandmother, my aunts, my grandfather, and my family was there. And living in Delaware, I had my two aunts, because my mother is a triplet. But I would say, it was them. It was pretty much them. And then my mom, she had her own social circle because she went to Delaware State, in Delaware as well. So she developed a circle. I mean, a social circle from there. So I was aware of those friends as well.
So, how did your upbringing shape your sense of responsibility and service?
Um, I would say the community aspect. My family engaged with a lot of people. And when I say engaged with a lot of people, like, you know, I lived in a neighborhood called Bay Tree, and I lived in a townhome, and none of my neighbors we knew each other, but eventually we got to know each other where they began hosting cookouts together and functions, black, white, Hispanic. It was literally four different races on in these four sets of townhomes, and um, just seeing people engage with one another, and eventually it somewhat began to matriculate across the entire neighborhood, where more neighbors became involved and developing that sense of community and harmony. I guess that somewhat impacted me. When I first moved to Washington D.C., the first thing I did was go to the recreation center down the street, and I introduced myself, I and I began to volunteer right away. Like, I hit the ground running there, and everywhere I went, I somewhat been like that. Besides, I would say, um, between 18 to 21, when I got to Hawaii, I didn't. But when I was in Texas, I volunteered to coach a basketball team while in the military. Um, when I was in Germany, I helped with a foundation where we would, like, literally begin to build a house, like go to Sweden or Switzerland, excuse me, build a house, like every so often on Saturdays. So I would just say that that sense of community and camaraderie, I think, is what is somewhat missing today, where people are a bit more private, a bit more individualized. So just growing up in that, and being outside playing with kids of multitude of races and multitude of ages, and being out there till 8, 9 p.m. while the parents are enjoying themselves. I just somewhat envision that everywhere I go, or somewhat, um, you know, picture that
So,
everywhere
what early experiences exposed you to the realities of inequality and justice?
I go. I would say the first one was Rodney King. Just seeing the video of somebody being beat up on camera as a kid was kind of like, and then hearing that the police got away with it. That was, I would say, that was my first sense of injustice. And then, I personally felt like I experienced it as well. Even with my first arrest, I didn't necessarily deem it appropriate when I was like 14. And actually, I was just defending myself. But that would say my first injustice. And, you just hear the horror stories as you grow as well. So,
So, as you were growing and you're learning, I guess your new environment there as you are in Dover, who
mhm.
were the people in your childhood who believed in you the most?
Sheesh. So, as a child, I would say, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think everybody lost hope in me at one point in my life. My mom was fighting for me to get aligned, but I don't think, you know, just for her peace of mind, but I don't necessarily think she believed in me. I believe there was doubts about me even into my 30s, which is why I somewhat acquired these degrees. I didn't necessarily do them for me. I just more so did it to deflect or change the narrative about me. You have to. I left my family at 18, So that's their last memory, somewhat of me. This is before FaceTime and all this tech. This is
Okay.
2005, where like when I left, I was a memory. like I, unless I got on the phone and called you, but I didn't call too many people. I'm not really a phone person. I'm not really communicated once I transitioned, but um, my family was somewhat, that was their last memory. So even when I got out the military, first it was a lot of noise about that because a lot of my family members felt like I shouldn't have got out. They thought it was the end of the world for me. I wasn't going to do anything with my life. Um, in addition, even when I got out, I ended up going to jail when I was in college, and just for like a month and a half or something like that. But I remember my father. Well, I didn't hear this, but he told my girlfriend at the time when she called him to tell him that I was in jail, or he called her, um, that he knew that was going to happen. He said that, and I was like 27 then, maybe. Uh, he said that, so that just lets you know like how far down the line that my family thought one way of me, and me going to jail didn't necessarily help deflect that narrative. So when I got my bachelor's degree, it was kind of like, nah. When I got my um, master's degree, it was kind of like, okay. And then when I got my PhD, it was kind of like I was the first person in my family to acquire a PhD. So it was kind of like then I somewhat garnered my respect. But I remember visiting my family when I would come home and we'd all be together and I would say something and I would just be blatantly ignored as if I wasn't like smart enough because my younger sister was in college. All my older brother was in college. Everybody's in college and I'm just kind of, you know, in the military and they're going off rumors of what they hear. So,
So, well, so with that being said, and so I guess I'm understanding here as you're explaining this.
mhm,
So then, can you tell us though, being a young black man, and
mhm.
when this occurred, how were you able to navigate, those situations for yourself to improve as to who you are now?
Um, I'm gonna be honest with you. I just I just wanted to never experience poverty. My mom didn't subject me to that. I wasn't experienced with poverty. And maybe my early years, maybe we experienced some level of poverty. But I mean, my mom, we didn't grow up affluent, I realized, but my mom hid it. It felt like I could have what I want. It felt like so me never experiencing like living in projects or anything like that. I'm gonna be honest with you, that somewhat just motivated me to never want to um never want to become that. Um, it's disturbing watching middle class kids. You're supposed to do better than your parents. Is ultimately what I think, and it's disturbing to see. Excuse me, middle class children subject themselves to a lower standard of living than your parents provided from you. So, um, me, I just, money. I'm be honest with you, money is somewhat what motivates me. It motivates me to take a risk. Um, and it somewhat motivated me to not want to go to jail, be subjected to jail, washing your drawers at the sink, having two pair of underwear when you arrive, and things like that. So just that experience alone, was just like it just wasn't for me. I know how I was raised. I was raised decent. I wasn't raised to be, a criminal. I wasn't raised, I was raised with strict rules, with a strict mother. So that's something what just made me realize, like, a lot of my arrests, I'm gonna be honest with you, is like emotion based. Like something happens and I'm triggered and I react, but nothing like a criminal enterprise or just out here just like tearing down a community and selling a bunch of drugs and things like that, but it was just yeah. So I would just say just I didn't want to subject myself to living a life of poverty. And with each charge you get, life just it gets harder because it's a bigger hole to get out of because you have to pay the restitution, probation, and just go through all the administrative aspects of it and going to court. It's time consuming. It's definitely going to affect your pocket, and I would encourage anybody to participate.
However, there's a I'm putting the comment here on the screen here in the chat. It's
Okay.
from Benjamin. And Benjamin says, "Good evening to everyone, Mr. King and guest of the show. Thank you, Benjamin, for being here. You can respond to these if you'd like." And, you know, uh, so, when did you first realize you were called to serve others?
Um, I don't know if there was a particular moment when I went to undergrad. I didn't necessarily think through my degrees or thoroughly like research what I wanted to do, and I just chose social work because it just somewhat aligned with me value wise. I chose social work, and I didn't even know social workers actually like got licensed and became therapists. That's how ignorant I was to the to this particular field. I just knew that social work served others, and I always looked. When I was growing up, there were young male black figures in my community that like took us to the basketball gym to play basketball, coached us in the Simon Circle League. You know, and got involved with us. And I thought they were the coolest people in the world. Gary, Mr. Hockaday, Daryl, they all were Dell State graduates, so, or students at the time. And I just thought they were the coolest people in the world. They had the latest shoes on, latest, Avirex jackets and things. So I just somewhat wanted to be them. So I just was like, I want to do the same thing they did. And, you know, I knew social work somewhat aligned. I just thought community based. I never got licensed in social work. I never pursued it. I never took a test. I just simply went into community work uh, and engaging people and uplifting. I think therapy is effective. I don't want to minimize it, but it's individualized, it's private, and I just feel that I could be much more of an asset with a community impact. And I have a lot of community ideas. They just cost money. So.
So, how did your family influence the values and your worldviews?
My mom, you probably hear a lot about my mom. She was mean. Well, I felt like at the time she was mean, but my mother, she saw the bigger picture and she instilled in me a lot of values that I'm truly appreciative of. And I didn't see at the time, I didn't see what she was instilling in me, but ultimately, I would say for the most part, it paid off. But, values, just such as respect, that was probably number one, respect. My mom had me going to church every Sunday, whether I wanted to or not. My mom had me participating in the choir to support my aunt, who was the choir director at the time. So, just supporting others and uh, grades. My mom we didn't accept C's in our household, at the time until I got old enough to, become a bit rambunctious. But yeah, I would say, yeah, she just instilled that in me. And I would say my mom was more of a disciplinarian or than a actual love. Like she didn't necessarily display love uh, a lot of the time. She just made sure we were in order, but she didn't necessarily have the time either. Like she's fatigued. She worked a lot. She drove an hour to work, drove an hour back. Every morning she was at work when we woke up for school. She would call the house and wake us up. So, and she taught me hard work. I'm gonna be honest with you. My mom was a very hard worker, like very hard worker. You know, um, and witnessing what she did, and to come home and take care of two children, in addition to dealing with my chaos when she came home at times, is just like I was super ungrateful of it at the time and naive. But as I get older, I'm super appreciative of it, and I'm hopeful that um, I can pay it forward. So that's so she definitely instilled the hard work factor. I will work. Like, I will work long hours. I think I can outwork just about a lot of a large percentage of people. So,
Here's another comment here. I'm not sure how to say that name. MD Ramatha Sharif. He says, "What's up, dog?"
Yeah. Oh, what's up, man?
Um, what role did faith, community, or culture play in your development?
Faith development. Faith. I just developed that honestly through my family. Well, my mom and aunt. My Aunt Virgie, she was my mom's a triplet again, but she she stayed in church. They kept me in church, Bible study, choir practice. I used to read the announcements. Just naturally being in church on a week basis, it just provides that grounding, that basis, that where you develop some sense of faith, even when you go astray, right? Like it still is that grounding, and you know, you tend to in your 20s definitely or early years, you tend to stray and then return when you need something or you need to get out of a bind. I had a bad habit of that. So I would say that my mother helped develop that. My Jackie, she taught me how to say my prayers at night, things like that. And community. It's funny because my I didn't partake in a lot of like community engagement outside of like the functions my family hosted that everybody in the neighborhood would come to. Um, you know, I somewhat just developed that, I guess, that sense of empathy for others kind of on my own. Yeah, I had an uncle, he would take us in every summer. I thought that was just honorable of him. But yeah, I didn't really grow up with like a lot of community like engagement or community work. I just somewhat had that, I guess, that gene or that trait, that characteristic about myself. I empathize with others, and I somewhat want people to not experience or skip the steps, the unwarranted, the unneeded steps in order to acquire what you're seeking. You know, so I just try to assist people with that, especially youth, which is my soft spot because I know how easily corrupted the youth mind um, can be. I mean, yeah.
So, what is one moment from your youth that still
Mhm.
guides your decisions today?
Hmm. One moment from my youth that guides my decisions today. I would have to say, um, I would have to say my first arrest. I would say my first arrest is what guided me into the criminal justice field. It's somewhat helped me understand because I was arrested. I was released upon recognizance, and when I went to court, I was somewhat railroaded. I didn't have a public defender. I had the 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 victim was my father, but he's speaking to me about signing a plea deal under the premise that if I don't sign it, I'm going to get locked up at Stevenson, the juvenile jail, which is just so backwards, where the victim should not be speaking to me, negotiating with me about the terms and conditions of my. And if I actually went to court, well, I know today, if I actually went to court and actually told the truth, then, I would have never actually had that. It would have been dismissed. I was hit first. I just defended myself. I was scared of my father, at the time. I was scared of him. So there was no way I was ever going to hit him first. But I was also at an age where I was also not going to get hit either. So, um, and I remember being in a police car arguing with the black female police officer. And she's basically speaking as a parent, like, you don't disrespect your parents. And I'm just like, I'm in the back seat yelling in handcuffs, like, well, he hit me first. Like, and they don't know the context of our relationship or the historical dynamics. So I got railroaded. I accepted it. I was on probation for a year, and then it basically triggered, or it domino effect more arrests. Um, because of that exposure to the criminal justice system and seeing that honestly they're not going to do nothing. That's what you learn. Like they're going to give you probation. They're going to give you probation. It's called PBJ, sometimes probation before judgment. And then you may get house arrest. I got house arrest at once, but I got house arrest for not coming in on time for curfew on homecoming night. Little petty things like that. So it was just like, and what they developed, what they groomed, I'm gonna be honest with you, is a demon almost. They were slowly grooming that. I'm not, because I became not fearful of consequences. What they thought they were, what they intended to do, didn't make me fearful. It just, I was returning home every night. So what was there to be fearful of? I went to a group home. I was there for a month, and I returned, but I received my 3 hots in the cot. So it was kind of like they somewhat developed a demon. And, as time went by, my crimes just worsened as time went by, especially my first year in college at
So
18.
what motivated you to join the army?
Homelessness. Yeah, homelessness. My mother was not letting me come back. I got kicked out of college. I got kicked out of Dell State. Uh, and when I got kicked out, I didn't even last the semester. I got kicked out before my 18th birthday. My birthday is November 19th. I think I got kicked out like November 17th, something like that. They kicked me out. Um, And when they kicked me out, I just slowly crept my way back into the house. Like I didn't bring bags, but I was in there. My mom saw me there one day. She didn't mind. But then after a few days, she's kind of like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm just telling her the semester's over. I wouldn't even tell her the truth. To this day, she doesn't know I got kicked out. So she'll probably maybe learn theater. But um, yeah, she just told me I can't stay here. She told me that. So I ran to the recruiter. My father was in the military. He was in the Air Force. So I was somewhat familiar. And Dover has an Air Force base. So fairly, I was familiar. But yeah, I joined. No, that's what propelled me to join the army.
So how did the military service transform your mindset?
Hmm. Well, one, it made me realize I wasn't the toughest person in the world. Although I was under this illusion I was, because when you're at home, it's your safe haven. If anybody on campus at Dell State had an issue with me, I had people behind me. I'm from Dover, so like it wasn't much you can do to me. Now I'm all the way in Hawaii, 140 pounds, and I got to hold my own. And in '05, 2005, excuse me, when joining the military, like they allowed anybody and everybody. The guy I joined with, he was a white guy. He was defending his sister. He killed somebody. He did time. He was in the car with me to go to the MEP station at Fort Meade in Baltimore. I'll never forget it. He was in the back seat with me. He was big, so but ultimately, um, it just showed me that you're not who you think you are. That was one, and that there's people really about that life, whether in the military or not. Is what I realized, and I definitely went through some. I experienced some bumps and bruises while in Hawaii. So,
Wow. So what lessons from the army still show up in your leadership style?
um, I would I would say the ability to engage with. Um, I think it helped on a cultural level where I'm able to engage with people of all different types of cultures, races, ethnicities. I think we somewhat gets, and I'm very malleable to people's personalities. So I have this phrase where 80% be yourself, but um, 20% allow for flexibility because you don't know who you're engaging with, and just to be mindful and respectful of others. So basically, I would say that it just made me culturally confident when I engage others, or you know. So I would say that's what it helped me do, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
So how did serving 8 years shape your understanding of discipline and resilience, because you're showing a lot of resilience. Because I mean, to do this, to have this happen to you early on, and to bounce back and to get to where you are now, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think the resilience came from the workload. We used to be tasks that were assigned to us, and I just couldn't believe, like, I would say to myself, we're never going to get this done. And I don't mean from like a 19-year-old perspective. I mean, even from a 40-year-old who's experienced life, like the workloads we would get. And when we would get it done, it was just like, okay, like that wasn't too difficult. And then like there'd be incidents, I mean, moments where like we're going on 10-mile runs and things. And I wasn't even, I joined the military as a private E1 because I couldn't even pass the physical fitness test when I joined. I was scrawny, but I couldn't run. I was just all out of shape. And, just developed mentally, it just made me a lot stronger. The tall tasks, the long runs, the being talked down by people. And this is '05. I joined in '05. The Facebook was barely relevant. You didn't know people. This is when people didn't post their political views and things, and now today I see some leaders that I have that are cold racist. And think about engaging with these people, and you know it, but you can't say it, if that makes sense. Like, I know you're racist about your treatment, but it's it's difficult to put into words and explain to somebody or leadership. And you can't be, at that time you couldn't be accusatory. So that my military experience shaped me to, like, I don't think any task is tall enough. I don't I'm I'm not fearful of doing anything now, if that makes sense. I've watched us take vehicles, literally MRAPs, and load them up on trains, and they go from Fort Bliss in Texas to California so we could train at NTC. Then we get them off, we train them, clean them up, put them back on the trains. They get shipped across the US and then catch flight to Iraq. Like, and I used to see these same vehicles get shipped there, and I used to just be mind boggled. Like we did that, and things like that. So I just realized, like, there's no tall order that that we don't outweigh. So it's just somewhat, I put my mind to something and I decide I'm going to do it, which is somewhat what propelled me academically, and just to have the discipline to go at it every day, the discipline to repeat the same day on a day in day out basis. It could somewhat consume you mentally a little bit, but that's the resiliency, um, as well. So.
So let's talk about your academic journey and your doctoral work. Why did you choose to pursue a doctorate in law and policy?
Because I consider law school, I took my LSAT. I was accepted into Howard Law, but they told me I couldn't work my my first year. They told me I couldn't work, and I was already employed. DC public schools. I had just got promoted, so I was earning more money than I've ever earned in my life. So that wasn't necessarily a negotiable at the time. So um, I later learned I could have worked. I didn't know. I mean, talking. I should have spoke to other law students, but again, I'm in my bubble. I don't talk to many people of academia, outside of my undergrad friends who maybe just got their bachelor's and went on to work. But I don't really talk to high levels or of professions until recently when I got into politics here in DC. But so I explored different programs, but I knew I wanted it to be like public policy based, uh, something of that nature. And I happened to come across Northeastern University. They had an online program. Just had to go in for residencies, Seattle, Boston, different places. So I signed up. Of course, I had an interview because of my criminal history. I guess they was a bit hesitant, but yeah, it worked out. It worked out for me.
What was the focus of your doctoral research?
It was on the Box Law in Washington, D.C. So it's called the Fair Criminal Record Screening Act of 2014. And basically, it's a law that prevents employers on inquiring about your criminal background or your criminal history before an offer for employment.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So is this anything like does it have anything? Is that, well, is that in relations to the Polygraph Protection Act that they have, where people are can't do certain things to incriminate or to punish employees for work via like something like in a research kind of like thing with criminal acts.
Yeah, I'm sure it sounds like it has some ties. I'm not too familiar with
Mhm.
that law just yet, but yeah, it's a local law here in Washington D.C. It's in New York. It's in several other states, Washington State, I believe. But basically, if you notice in certain states when you apply for jobs, they will not ask you if you have a criminal history of any sort. They're not allowed to until employment offer occurs.
So, how did your academic journey deepen your understanding of systems and inequity?
Um, I would say my research showed that I think my research basically, my my research gave me an anecdotal experience. I would say my research showed that people utilize policy as a means of PR and as a means of public relations and resume building versus its actual impact at times. So when I was going around to interview people in regard to the ban the box law, because basically what my theory was, it's flawed. Although well intended, it's flawed because that's what the research is saying in other places. And this is where it's going to get a little nerdy, but so I would go to interview people, and when I went to interview them, either they realized it was flawed and just kind of like, what can we do about it? Or they was just like, yeah, we did that. We and giving me a long storyline that I didn't care to know, you know. But they were proud of this law. And what I realized for returning citizens, people do this one good, and they just assume that they wipe their hands of it. There's no evaluation of the impact because there's unintended consequences with any law, and um, the unintended consequences weren't necessarily, you know, analyzed. There was no analysis and no follow up. It's just like, oh, we passed this law. It's good for them, and they move on. And they're an afterthought again. And again, that's just good PR. Like at that point, you're not actually doing, passing this law for its actual impact. You're just passing a law because it made you feel good or it gave you some good PR.
So, well, what advice do you give young black scholars pursuing advanced degrees?
Mm. I would just say remain disciplined. There's a book store I went to on 8th Street called Solid State Bookstore. I was in there 7 days a week. I was in there every single day. I would go in there every single day, even when it hurt. There was times I would go in my car, parked in front, and I would go in there to scream because the work was like the work was that difficult, especially quantitative classes. Like once you get into that, like it was so difficult at one point, especially like learning systems like R, those type of systems. It was highly difficult, but just remain resilient, remain disciplined, and I would encourage people to network a lot better than I did when I was in my PhD program.
So, how did teaching at Virginia State University influence your approach to mentorship?
It taught me to meet people where they're at. I realized I'm thinking they're college students, but then I had to think about it made me reflect on me being a college student. Like, you know, first day, everybody's there, and as time goes by in the semester, the attendance weans off, the engagement weans off, you know, and then ironically, at the last 2 weeks, everybody's coming back and they want to act. Um, so I had to personalize, my engagement with each student and work with them, because again, although I look at them as children, I'm going to be honest with you, I had to realize that they are many adults, like they're experiencing their own life experiences. They are um, going through their own trials and tribulations. So I had to meet them where they were necessarily at and work with them. And that's the beauty of a HBCU where you won't necessarily get that if you're in a class with 200 other students. We was in a classroom maybe 25 to 30 at most. So um, I it definitely taught me. And then I had to self-reflect on mine, like how much of a nuisance I was to my director, uh, our chair for our department, Dr. Thornton. Love her to death. You know, I went to jail in the middle of a semester. Like, you know, they was mailing me my homework to me to do while I was in jail. You know, and Dr. Thornton, she loved me to death. She loved me more than I loved myself probably at one point. But you know, she just it's just like she she garnered that level of engagement for me and personalized my studies for me. So I just had to pay it forward, and that's what it taught me. I understood what she actually did for me.
So, as you mentioned, meeting these students where they are, what
Mhm.
are some of the things that you can think about your situation compared to today that you would tell some of these students, some of these kids that are actually trying to get these upper degrees? What are some of the things you would tell them not to do?
Don't hang around distractions. I would encourage them to do. I wouldn't necessarily, you know, when you're on a pilgrimage of some sort to improve upon yourself, you know, that's a personal experience. It's not for everybody to experience. It's not for everybody to anybody to disrupt. It's not. I would, you know, it's literally a personalized experience. I would say limit your you know, limit your access during that process, and garner as much knowledge as you can. Acquire internships, whatever you can do. Even if you have a job, get an evening internship. Work with a researcher on external. It's beyond your academia that you learn while in your courses. I would encourage people to be a bit more engaging with who they actually are seeking to be.
So let's talk a little bit about your social work and human services.
Okay.
Um, what drew you to social work as a profession?
I'm into social work as a profession. The word social and the word work, like I wanted to do work socially. I wanted to do work in the community, and I knew that that degree aligned with that. I didn't know about the license share and becoming a therapist. I didn't even know that side of social work. I didn't necessarily plan when I went to college. I just knew I was going to college. So that's what enabled me. And I mean, you know, you can look around. You know, you see who's I don't you see who's suffering. You see who's experiencing inequities. You see who's experiencing these things. So I I chose to yeah, I just chose to go into social work.
So, what misconceptions do people have about social workers?
They're underpaid. I'm not going to say that
So,
they're underpaid. I may have phrased that wrong. My apologies. I'm going to say that they don't make any money. Is is a misconception, because what happens is, and if I was smarter and actually planned accordingly, I would have gotten licensed because you can work your regular full time job, get off, have a clientele of 6 to 10 clients, and conduct personal therapy charging hours. You can also complete biocycle or some form of assessments and charge $145 per assessment. In addition, you can be provided supervision and charging master degree students who are seeking supervision hours to become licensed. So there's so many different alternatives to acquiring money that you just will have to have a little hustle behind you.
how has your work in behavioral health shaped your understanding of trauma?
I would say I'm still a work in progress with that. I would say that I I'm I'm starting to realize now as I get older the the traumas you experienced as a child possibly could affect you in the long term. So I would say I'm still a work in progress with that, but you know, I'm definitely seeing like adverse childhood experiences are definitely reflective of they definitely are somewhat aligned with your adult experiences. You know, when I was working as a case manager with housing, I worked at transitional housing program, and literally clients clients that I had, I found out that they were children. Their parents were actually in the same program at one point 15 years ago, you know, and they were children in the program. And now they evolved be be a participant or a client of the same program, and they know the ins and outs, like, and they will let you know that. But you know, they know the ins and outs of the program. So I just realized like um, it's somewhat a cycle, you know, with this.
So, what systemic barriers do human service professionals face daily?
A political disconnect, bureaucracy, technology. I mean, there's so many various services workers experience that. That's why I even created my app to somewhat provide them some level of reprieve, right? But yeah, I mean, there's a disconnect from uh, from the politicians who actually enact the laws, right? There's a disconnect from the leadership of the agencies, between the frontline worker and the agencies. The technology is horrible. There's a whole book on that, Recode America, if you want to read that, by Jennifer Potska. Um, so, uh, you know, they deal with the tech discrepancies, the slow platforms, the repeating manual uplift of, you know, their administrative duties, as well as you know, hostile clients and things. Like you're dealing with people with mental health concerns and diagnosis, and you know, you're going into their homes, you're going out in the community with them. It's just yeah, it's they deal with a lot of barriers. But I tend to think frontline workers in the human services field are an afterthought as well, which is why there's burnout and there's a high turnover rate in that field.
So, how do you stay grounded while working in emotionally demanding environments?
I try not to get too emotionally invested, so I just maintain I just maintain that, I guess, that parameter around me. I just don't become too emotionally invested. You know, I want what's best for the client, but you know, ultimately, I realize as time goes by, you can't want it more than the client. You know, so I'll conduct my due diligence. But you know, if like a client's to disappear, I'll reach out to you. But there's only so much I can do. I'm not going to harass you either. So um, I think that's one of the things I do. And I have, you know, I have like a great social circle. Like I have friends who are not in this work. None of my friends are. So like I can truly disconnect from it on my off time. So.
But when you mention all those things, especially when the environment gets demanding and so forth, like
Mhm.
what are some of the things or some of the techniques you do to keep the stress away from you? Because
Mhm.
if it's so emotionally, draining and so forth, which I'm sure it is, I
Mhm.
mean, that's without a doubt. I mean, what are some of the things that you do to help to prevent those things from bringing you down?
Um, what are some things I do to prevent from? Uh, I would say I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty good question. I guess it's like I said, I try to maintain most emotional restraint, uh, a high level of restraint, and I try to never personalize things. So I just do, I guess, a lot of self. I guess I just maintain a level of discipline within myself, where I never allow outside variance to somewhat disrupt what I have going on internally, too much. No matter how much of the stressors may occur, you know, I mean, there's things I do. I work out, I run, and when you run is where like everything goes goes through your mind, right? And um, you know, so I would say that. I guess that's the best way I can answer it.
So then, what is the most rewarding part of being a social worker?
Am I on here? I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. One of the most rewarding things I would say is just seeing, honestly, people do better, but particularly Black people do better. Um, people that look like you and I, just seeing them do better is what makes me feel better. Seeing, I used to coach basketball here when I was in DC, and well, I'm still in DC. I'm just not there currently, but um, I'm out of town. But when I was coaching basketball, these kids were 8 years old outside playing and come to practice. We would be on them and things like that. And now, a few of them are getting $1 million NIL deals. And just seeing that, like that level of investment for kids that could have easily went astray. I mean, they're not living in Beverly Hills. They're literally living in Northeast Washington, D.C., Trinidad neighborhood. And, that says enough if you Google it. You couldn't get into the neighborhood when I first got there without an ID and an address in Trinidad. So, yeah, just seeing somebody do better, especially Black and brown people, I would say is what inspired me to keep going, to keep doing this. Um, and I want to do it at on a larger scale. I want to meet people where they're at. Not everybody is an athlete like these kids that, were able to acquire these NIL deals, but there's other ways to get into money. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I know money is what somewhat makes this world go round. And I encourage youth to, at a minimum, go get money because that's what they're looking at every day on these socials. They're looking at people floss money, flex money, and that's what motivates them. I know how I felt when I was their age, which is why they're willing to take on 10 to 20-year sentences just to get some form of currency. So, but I want to encourage them to go get some money, legit. And there's ways of doing that.
So, what is the most challenging?
Society, society is challenging. Our culture, you're going up against a beast. You know, my friend, I was helping him move a couple weeks ago when I was in DC, and when I helped him move, we're I'm 39. He's 39. We got on the elevator. The white female didn't get on with us, and we was just like we made the joke like she was scared to get on with us. Mind you, we're in an apartment building. We're not like in a private, isolated elevator, but ultimately, it just it just says a lot how we're stigmatized. So we're going up against a lot. We're going up against how the media portrays us. We're going up against how movies portray us. We're going up against how we portray ourselves at times on socials. Uh, we're going up against our own people, how they portray it. I mean, what they think of us. These Black children or Black adults that went to PWIs, there's a bit of classism behind that. They think that they're, you know, better and things. So um, than a person that maybe went to a HBCU. So we're going up against a lot, and um, to encourage a youth to go up against this nasty world at 18, young and naive, that's a tall task. Um, it is a tall task.
How do you define ethical care in today's climate?
I mean, just going about things the right way with the individual, doing right by them. If we're going to try to portray it that I'm doing everything right to do it, then no, because there's going to be times you're going to have to backdoor, call somebody to help this person, and skip the line maybe for this individual because you know how urgent it may be. But I would just say, honestly, ethnically, Ethical care is doing what you can for this individual for them to succeed, in my opinion. I don't care how academia puts it. I don't care how a white person puts it. They're not going through what we're going through. Most of the white people here, in Washington D.C., don't even work frontline work. They're the administrators. They're the supervisors. They're not dealing with what we got to deal with on a day-to-day basis. They do the research and tell us, well, this is what the data says. Well, I'm living it. Okay, I'm out here every day. You're not. Okay, and that's the disconnect, and that's why we have misinformed policy or unaligned policy today. So it's it's so how somebody else may you know determine what ethical care is and roll their eyes to my opinion. I don't care because I know I've empowered a lot of people around me, um, and you know across the DMV area, not even just DC. I can't even subject it to Trinidad. I helped a kid today acquire his court paperwork, which he was having difficulty acquire because it was pre-dismissed. The prosecutor didn't even pursue charges. So when you look up his name for his charge, nothing comes up. He's 18 years old. He's trying to join the military and he's being held up. He's at a shelter right now in Capitol Heights, Maryland, at Promise Place Shelter. So I went online, did some research. I found his mugshot because Shelby County posts everybody. He caught a charge fighting his father, ironically, right? But I found this charge. I was able to get in contact with Shelby County in Tennessee, mind you. He's from Tennessee. Shelby County court, and I spoke with the representative, and she wanted us to come in. Well, somebody needs to come in and get it. I get it, man. But again, ethical care. Like I could have just left it at that. Well, that's the rules. But I explained the situation, and I said, he's trying to join the military. He's in a shelter right now. Someone gave the sob story, and she worked with me, and that is ethnically inclined to his successors, right, or aligned with his successors. Not not some nonsense rule that you can't email a letter saying that it was predisposition. Uh, it was, it wasn't even, he was never even prosecuted or anything like that. So yeah, it's, I get a bit annoyed with white person textbook definitions for things. It's a cultural disconnect. It is.
Well,
Yeah.
that divide is actually going to get worse.
Yeah.
Let's go to your entrepreneurship and talk about your company, TryCaSie,
hmm
AI innovations, and the things that you do there. Can you
hmm
tell us what inspired you to create TryCaSie?
I try to think about the afterthought. I was considerate of persons like me, like myself. I work that frontline work. I know where the gaps exist. I know where I went into politics hoping I could make a change in that. Slow. It's high school. It's who's popular, who has the power, is who is the decision maker or has some influence, right? Versus the underdog. I consider myself an underdog in those rooms because one, I don't look like them. I don't hang out with them. I have tattoos. I have the beard. I have a tat on my face. So I definitely don't look like them. And but I worked my way to get into a room, to get into the room with them. You know, and I had to work twice as hard, if anything. So yeah, it just creating a company just basically was trying to find some reprieve, grant some grace, grant some ease to a frontline worker's day-to-day work, who ultimately is us. It is us, it is Black people. So again, I basically said I was going to do something for them, and I know that's a pain point, documentation. So I sought a solution, and again, I have no coding background, none of that. I guess this goes back to the resiliency and the determination, but I studied on how to become a tech co-founder, basically, or a tech founder. I made a profile on the Y Combinator founder website. It's like a Facebook for like-minded, like tech and founders. So for them to match, I and met with different people with my idea. Some didn't go fall through, some fell through, some didn't. And ultimately, I met my co-founder, and we developed a product that is now available on Apple and Google. Um, you know, but again, I'm not doing this for myself. Like, I'm not trying to buy 3 yachts. Like, I'm perfectly fine living a normal life. I do feel like we need to pay billionaires need to pay their fair share taxes, and my messaging will not change if I was to ever transition to that. But um, what I will say is I'm doing this, one, to acquire capital to recirculate into our community. I have plenty of ideas. There's plenty of vacant buildings in Northeast DC on H Street that can be utilized for some good. Um, and in order for that to happen, I need to acquire the capital. So that's an ancillary reason for why I started TryCaSie. The first reason was honestly just to provide some help to frontline workers because they're drowning in paperwork, they're being dismissed from jobs, they're quitting jobs, they're fed up, and they deal with a lot on a day-to-day basis.
So, let me ask you this question. You just said that there are plenty vacant buildings in Northeast on H Street.
Hmm.
Really? What is
Yeah,
what's happening?
they're unaffordable. You know, um, they're just unaffordable. The rent is high, just like an apartment rent or a townhome. The rent of a townhome, the rent of commercial space is just as high. I know because I was a friend of mine, a couple friends of mine. We were inquiring about purchasing a place on H Street, and the owner didn't want to sell it to us. He wanted to rent it to us. And when he told us the rent, it was just like astronomical. Like it made no financial sense to actually conduct that deal. But it just goes to show you. So basically, he was trying to sublease it to us because we found out he was renting it. So he
Oh,
wanted out of, yeah, So it's like and these buildings are vacant because it's expensive. Greed is getting in the way with these developers, and uh, I just feel like these spaces need to be occupied, and they can be occupied in a very resourceful way.
so how does AI improve documentation without replacing human judgment?
So what our tool does, it allots for human judgment because nothing is approved, nothing is submitted until it is reviewed by a human. So basically, I will use this conversation. If I was recording, well, we are recording it, but if we were utilizing my app, it would summarize this conversation and then create a case note for it, and from there it would be in a draft state. And once it's in a draft state, that's where the human review occurs. You will review it. If you approve of it or you need to edit, you can manually edit, you can verbalize and edit, and then you can submit it. And there's the human review.
So, what problems does TryCaSie solve for behavioral health professionals?
Administrative burden, documentation. There's assessments that need to be completed, 45-minute to 1 hour assessments that need to be completed. We're knocking out a biopsychosocial assessment from Clinical Tracker in under 5 minutes. That's about a 45-minute assessment to complete, but we're completing under 5 minutes. So, we just got to get users to be able to adapt the behavior of verbalizing a case note. And once they're able to adapt to that behavior, then it would definitely make their life, it would definitely provide them some work-life balance.
So, what makes TryCaSie different from other documentation tools?
Ours is specifically designed uh, for frontline workers and mobile access. None of these apps, nobody has a mobile app for them to complete the case note. So if I wanted to, I can summarize this meeting right here on my phone, and we can get a case note draft completed, and it's stored, and you can go on your computer and submit it, or you can submit it on your phone. So one, we have mobile access. Two, we allot for different formats. So We're specialized for a lot of people are video conferencing recordings. So it'll draft a case note basically off a video conference. It will transfer this. But ours, we allow you to manually type as well as verbalize and summarize a case note, and then it will transfer it over into the applicable format for this app.
So, how do you guys ensure the platform remains ethical and compliant?
I have a CTO. He's a lawyer. So he went to Thurgood Marshall Law School. So he's smart. His name is George Forrest. He's a nerd. I'm just going to put it out there. He's a nerd. He's much more nerdier than me. I present myself probably as the visionary and risk taker, but ultimately he's sharp. Uh, he's smarter than me. I'll tell you that. And he can read, he can read the bylaws of HIPAA. We actually just received the update. So we just secured a business in DC, and the business knew that they had to sign a basic associate agreement. Well, our CTO was able to find out that because they're a substance use treatment center, that they would need to sign, we would have to draft up another form called a qualified service organization agreement or something, because we will be handling substance abuse data and information, substance use data and information, that there's a separate agreement, and it took effect in February 16th of 2026. So it just took effect. They weren't even aware of that. So when we told them about it, right, and this, mind you, they have a compliance manager that's supposed to, stay in tune to this, but not saying it's of any fault to her, because this rule was enacted. This rule was enacted FY24 federally, but it didn't take effect. It gives you 2 years to, like, develop time to put it into action. So yeah, that's what so yeah, he found that out. I was just amazed because I wasn't in the know as well. I'm out here boots on ground. I'm away now trying to sell the business. I'm in Chicago, so it's just like yeah.
So, what has been the biggest challenge in building a tech company?
Well, if they would have told me how difficult it was going to be, I wouldn't do it. I'm gonna be honest with you. If I could go back in time, but I'm also an advocate. If you start it, finish it. I would say the biggest difficulty um, is generating some level of credibility. I'm in a risk adverse field, which means you have an individual who starts a private practice, hires a few clinicians, acquires their their electronic health record system. They're not willing to take on any more risk, because one risk can cause this to, non-existent. So, me walking into an office, and again, like I said, or previously, there's some form, I don't want to call it self-hate, but there's some form of doubt when it's us selling something versus, you know, uh, somebody of a different race. So, I also have to get over those barriers. I'm in a field. I joined a field where the odds are so stacked up against me. 2.7% of Black and brown people acquire venture funding. No, excuse me. Of of all the venture funding that exists in the U.S. that's been, distributed amongst investors, I mean, projects or products, only 2.7% of that have gone to Black and brown people. 0.7 of that is actually Black people. So literally, I'm going up against a 99% chance that I will never acquire investor funding, and that this probably will not succeed. 99% chance. People say, well, you could bootstrap, but bootstrap takes years, like, to generate an income that is going to be sufficient for you and your co-founder, and as well as maintain operations. Luckily, we're a low cost startup, but ultimately, like, yeah, we're going up against 99%. But I'm gonna be honest, that's what boredom would do. I mean, I got my PhD, I acquired all the jobs I wanted. I didn't necessarily, I could have been happy just collecting my six-figure salary. I get my military benefits and things like that, and went on with life, right? And say cheers with the, the alleged bougie of DC, black bougie or elitist here in DC, but you know, it just wasn't for me. I want to actually feel the impact. I want to see the output, and I just felt like at DC Council it wasn't occurring. Uh, I just felt like what I learned was at DC Council, it's not a politician's job to do the right thing. It's a politician's job to get reelected. So, so they may not do the unpopular, but it's actually effective. Um, I can give you an example with the whole Mark Cuban thing, but I'm not even gonna go down that hill. But yeah, so yeah.
So tell us, what has been the biggest reward?
Of starting my startup,
Yes, of
um,
TryCaSie.
of TryCaSie, the wow moment when I demo it. I try to not talk about my product because that's a salesman, right? It's just like, there's some people that could sell ice to, a penguin. But I try to just show them this is what it does. And there's a wow moment, like, wow, like, okay. And seeing that is what keeps me going and lets me know I have a great product. It lets me know that I'm not gonna say great, I have a good product right now that hopefully we can enhance it and make it a great product. Seeing the total number of case notes completed by my users uh is what motivates me. And but there's yeah, that's somewhat what motivates me, makes me happy to see, and I'm hopeful that at some point everybody's a user of it. Everybody adapts that behavior of verbalizing their case note and working smarter and not harder. Sometimes, that's difficult. That's a tall task.
So for those people that are watching today, as you
Hmm.
just mentioned, the situation that's at hand, because we do know that it's kind of dire.
Hmm.
What would they tell them? What would they be getting from your product that, and the reason why they should be looking at your product and what how they're going to benefit from
Well, it's perspectives. So I would say from perspective of the leadership, it allots for more client interaction. What's happening is, you know, literally human service workers, behavioral health workers are spending an entire day to complete their documentation. Fridays is what they say. No clients on Fridays because I have to complete my documentation. When we allot you the opportunity, and for the worker, so it allows you for more client interaction. More time to engage clients means you can engage more clients, which could equate for more money for a therapist, or um, it seeing more clients can help the organization so they can propose seeking higher funding from government entities such as local government, federal government, whatever it may be, whatever your funding mechanism is. For the worker, we're providing you time savings, from manually hand jamming your case note and having to think it through and sending it to your supervisor, it getting sent back because it's not of quality. What we're doing is we're standardizing the level of quality where it doesn't vary anymore. Like, hey, I know you're a good writer, but you're not, so it's going to be here when I'm reviewing it versus now everybody's just is doing just about the same. I mean, everybody's doing the same as far as the case note because you're using one standardized system. And then also, like I said, we're saving time for the worker. Now you don't have to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes completing a case note or assessment. Now it's taking less than 2 minutes. It's taking less. And that's if you type it. Like if you verbalize it, like it's quick. And I just want to get people to understand that. But people don't know. Like Uber started in like '08. I mean, Airbnb started in like '08. When did Airbnb become really popular? It took almost a decade almost, so yeah, they say for a startup, just don't die.
well, I'll tell you like this. you know I think once you've started your company like you have, you guys are on pretty good solid ground. It's just not growing as expansive as you'd like.
Right.
But I think as you are doing what you're doing and the way you're doing it, I mean, hey, it's not like the end of the world. but I think when you have something as prosperous and as what today's time is about,
Mhm.
I would hope that you don't let discouragement, get in the way and cause you to maybe sell it off and
Oh
get rid
no,
of it. I hope
no,
you don't do that. I hope you
no.
don't do that because I'm sure that there are there are lots and lots of eyes on what you're doing and they know what that product can do.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't plan to because I know as soon as I know as soon as I stop, it's it's going to take off. Like I know my luck, and I'm just going to stick this through and and continue to iterate and improve upon this product and ultimately achieve satisfying the customer. That's our main goal. Basically being a startup owner, I've realized you're just a problem solver at this point. Like you're problem solving for companies, for individuals. So
So, how do you envision TryCaSie evolving over the next 5 years?
I'm hoping it becomes, I hope it replaces the legacy platforms, these legacy platforms that we've been using for 20 plus years. I'm hopeful that we're the replacement for those. That takes time, that takes legislation, a long bureaucracy. But I'm hopeful that, Amazon began by just delivering books, right? But now they're this broad, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what it is they do. I'm just hopeful to broaden our scope, and I'm hopeful that we could possibly become the legacy. Well, legacy because they're old, but I'm hopeful we can become the legacy system and become a system where users don't adapt to our system. Our system adapts to users' behaviors and how they utilize the platform. So therefore, we can streamline their workflow and make it much more efficient.
Well, it's a hello from Caleb Manzar.
Okay. Hi, Kayla.
Hello, how are you? I hope you're enjoying the show. Um, what advice do you have for Black entrepreneurs entering into the tech space?
Get used to hearing no. Get used to hearing no. And no matter how many people want to coddle the messaging or um, just remember you're black trying to acquire somebody's money, and money has never been in our favor. And if the 1776 billion, one 1.776 billion is not showing you that, like right or wrong, whether you have a right product or whether you have a wrong product, just get used to hearing no. That's it. It's never in our favor, you know. So I would definitely, so I would definitely say develop a skin of steel and keep pushing. If you truly believe that you have a quality product that and don't be too dead set on your product. Be willing to pivot, iterate, change um, based on your customers' feedback and listen to them because you're here to appease them. And that's how you acquire the dollar, where you would just become undeniable at a certain point. And I'm still working to become it undeniable. Right now, we're deniable, right? But I'm hoping to become undeniable at some point.
How do you balance innovation with the realities of human service work?
Um, that that I would say this field is not the most tech savvy because it's a wide range from age range. You can check out our blog on our website, trycasie.com, TRYCASIE.com. But one of my blogs is I met with a 73-year-old worker at at a substance use treatment center, and she was complaining about case notes and how she completes her case notes on the weekends. And I just felt that was disturbing. It was one disturbing because at 73, I wouldn't necessarily say she's in her early years. She's still young to me, but the fact that she's spending, uh, you know, these years working on the weekends was a bit disturbing. Let alone already being at work, but that's could be her personal choice. So that was um, that was disturbing to hear. So, when I create this product, it made me realize that I have to spoon feed um, outcomes. The outcome you want the case note completed, but I have to spoon feed that to my clientele, to my customers, because it's such a diverse range. I mean, it's such a range, a diverse range of ages, from 73 years old who may not necessarily be the most tech savvy to a 25-year-old who can code and is very tech savvy. So I have to keep in mind that in the human services field, there's no there's no age limit. There's no I know it's black and brown people mostly involved in this, and I have to meet the customer where they're at. But it's so broad, it that's where the innovation meets human services.
Um, we when we chatted earlier, I told you we do Black History 365, and I asked
Hmm.
you who were the most influential persons in your life and career. You told me Muhammad Ali,
Hmm.
Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King.
Right.
Can you tell us why is Muhammad Ali one of your greatest influences?
One, just his ability to be himself, and no matter the room. I think I'm guilty of this. We have a um at times we have a tendency to change who we are
Code
when we get in.
switch.
Yeah, code switch, definitely, as far as verbalizing. And Muhammad Ali didn't do that. He did what he wanted when he wanted. Before he was rich, when he was rich, you know, and I embrace that. I embrace being yourself. I said I definitely don't want people code switching around me. You know, if I have the ability to hire people, if you're from Texas and you wear cowboy boots on a normal basis, I better hear a howdy. I want you to be your authentic self. And I realized, I was having a bit of imposter syndrome at my last employer because, you know, I mean, they're very smart individuals, but trying to just fit in and not necessarily be my authentic self, I somewhat tainted me, as far as my ability. But also, I just felt like, any idea I proposed was shut down and whatever. So that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, so I would definitely say Muhammad Ali, just being his authentic self, being standing up for what he felt was right, and he stood in that mud. So
So, what did Ali teach you about courage and conviction?
I would say, as far as courage, I would say he had the courage to stand up against a system that wasn't a system that was um, a system that just exploited us, right? Like um that used us. Then you leave to go to war, come back, Jim Crow still in effect. So basically, and I think his conviction was just more so being genuinely himself, authentic. I think that was his conviction. On camera, off camera, he was himself. I picked those three individuals, and it probably just seems like, oh, you picked, you know, the simplest individuals. But those are like the first three books I read as far as autobiographies. Like my uncle gave me a Malcolm X book and a Muhammad Ali book, and my mom bought me the Malcolm X book. My uncle Joey, shout out to my uncle Joey, but he's the one who gave me those books. And they were thick books then. And me, I'm like 8, 7. Like I'm looking at this book like I'm never gonna finish it. But autobiographies are the best types of books, in my opinion. But um, yeah, but it pulled me in. Those are like the first three books. So Muhammad Ali, definitely. And I still have them. I still have those same books again.
So, how has Malcolm X shaped your intellectual and personal evolution?
Personal to discipline. You know, Malcolm X was fast. He was still fasting in his adult years. Um, you know, and I remember reading the book, and just the first quarter of the book is his early years when he was Detroit Red, right? And just hearing how he was, and then going to prison and actually reading an entire dictionary. like like the switch up was just so crazy to me. Like it was so drastic. Like literally going from A to Z of as far as the individual, 1 to 10. And even in the movie, like when Denzel played him, and there was a scene where this white preacher was preaching to the inmates, and he's standing there, and it was when he made that transformation from Detroit Red after he met the Muslim brother in prison to Malcolm X, and he had the glasses, and I laughed so hard at the seat all the time because the camera starts like bottom and it kind of raises up on him because they're slowly showing you like, and then you see the glasses and the kufi, and it's just like an instant change, and it's just like that's literally how it was in the book, like like he went to prison, how he tells it. So I just feel like the ability to make such a hard change. Like me, I did it incrementally, right? But his ability to totally, change course, I respect it. I respect it to ignore past influences, to move on and do better for himself, eventually for his family, and ultimately for the greater society. I just like, you know, I mean, how could you ever speak down upon that?
So, what aspects of Malcolm X's discipline resonate with you most?
Um, Well, I mean, first, when I'm in binds, I'll ask, what will Malcolm X do? That's one. Two, I do. I'll ask like Malcolm X more so than not. And then I would say, as far as discipline, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, I think I more so garnered my discipline from the military, but so I wouldn't say maybe. I would just say Malcolm X has an influence because I know it's doable. Um, and seeing his level of discipline. I mean, his level of discipline to not even, you know, do some of the conduct some of the actions that his leaders were partaking in, um, and not necessarily taking advantage of his authority, his position, and the rank he held. It was obvious others were taking advantage of it, but yet he still didn't do it, and he became an outlier. But he became outcasted because he wasn't willing to provide this facade, this you know this facade to the masses that I am this person, but in reality, you know, secondary, I'm this person when you're not looking. So I just think, I mean, ultimately that's what got him killed. But yeah.
So, how has Dr. King influenced your moral and leadership framework?
I would just say his ability to mobilize people. And he went about it ethnically. He didn't, shoot a rap music video at the time. He didn't curse. He didn't, he did it from the pulpit. Uh, that's power, right? Um, and his ability to mobilize individuals to get into harm's way, and he wouldn't even be present. The fact that he was able to do that, like he had the conjecture to do that, um, it's just and he went about it ethnically. Like, today I told like, I said whether good or bad, it doesn't make money. But in our culture, what makes money is the negative, unfortunately. And you begin to realize this is as much as we want to play, portray the conspiracy theory. This is systematic. It's not by accident,
Right.
but um, you know, so I just uh again, those are the first three books, and those books always stay with me. I'll never forget those books for some reason. I always say Mike Tyson was one of the better books. I mean, Mike Tyson is one of the best books I've read, but for some reason, I don't remember every detail of it. Like I read those, like when maybe because my mind was a sponge then. But reading Mike Tyson's book is super entertaining, and there's so many different layers to him. But you know, um, but I remember the details of those books, inside and out. And I don't know if it's because my mind was a sponge at the time, but for some reason they don't go away from it at all.
I think it had something to do with the author because Alex Haley, when he wrote Malcolm
Yeah,
X, he
yeah,
had that all the way down to the
yes,
nitty
yes,
gritty. That
Yeah.
was Malcolm X, point blank.
Yeah. 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 Alex Haley. Yeah. Definitely.
Um, Final question for you.
Okay.
What do these three figures collectively represent in your life?
The ability to lead, honestly, ability to lead people in the right direction and not astray. That's what the three individuals represent to me. I haven't been able to do it. It is different times, but I will say that just their ability to lead morally, ethically, and um, and what we'll have a tendency to do as a society is pick people apart and point out their flaws as if we're not all flawed. Um, so, you know, I will say that ultimately, in my opinion, their good outweighs their bad. And that's all we can hope for when it's time, to meet our maker. So,
So, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement you'd like to leave for our audience? Can you tell them how to connect with you via social media? You know,
mm,
what's going on your website, the link to your website. What are some of the things that that could be beneficial for them?
well, I'll start with my socials. My Instagram is Dr. Dante Daniel, DrDantedaniel. My company is called TryCaSie. That's TryCasie. .com is the website. In addition, my LinkedIn is Dante Daniel, Dantedaniel. And I'm the CEO of TryCaSie. And I would say my last words of wisdom is get out and do something positive. Um, I don't want to be super narrow and tell people what or how they should do something, but ultimately do something. You know, I think I think we're fighting against a bigger machine now than ever before. You know, we're now going up against technology, keeping you on your phone, keeping you in the house, and you know, uh, and making us just you know comparing ourselves to others. I mean, somewhat just deteriorating, in my opinion. So I would just say get out and do something, whether it's for yourself or whether it's for others. Just do something is, in layman terms, is the best advice I have. Get out and do something. Don't sit around and don't get deterred by others because the people you think are smarter than you are not. The people you think are doing more than you aren't necessarily doing more than you, or they all started at zero. So yeah, just do what you can do.
Well, I want to thank you for being here and sharing some time with us. It was really enlightening, and
Mm,
I'm more than sure that as your company grows, I'm sure that you're going to make the best of all of those situations and make those best decisions.
appreciate
I know that it may take some time, but I'm more than sure that you'll be able to do that.
I appreciate that.
Uh, and for those of you that are watching on all of our channels, especially our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I ask if you would please support us by subscribing and enabling all notifications where you're able to get all of the shows live when we go live. And you will also be able to go back and watch each and every show and watch all the content of all the great leaders that have been here that's got messages of encouragement and things to do to help you to not just build your life but to build your communities. So in closing, Dr. Dante S. Daniel reminds us that leadership is not a title, it is a commitment. His journey from Camden to the Army, from social work to public policy, from community mentorship to AI innovation shows what is possible when purpose meets discipline. He stands at the intersection of service and strategy, compassion and innovation, community and technology. And through TryCaSie, he is building tools that empowers those who care for others, a legacy rooted in justice, dignity, and progress. As we close tonight's conversation, we honor his service, his vision, and his unwavering dedication to uplifting communities. This is the kind of leadership our world needs. This is the kind of story that defines America in black and white. I'm your host, Charles King. You guys have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow night for another great show.